Hello preppers, homesteaders, preppersteaders. As you can see, the temperature has dropped and we are still experiencing a little bit of fall colors, though most of the leaves, as you can see, are down on the ground and everywhere but the trees. But as you can see, a lot of them are still in the trees, but we are starting to get the 360 degree mountain views again because all the trees are now mostly with no leaves. We lost a lot of leaves this weekend. One of the things we noticed too is we treat ourselves every once in a while. We go to the coffee shop in town, get some coffee, and it was so busy this weekend in downtown Jasper. It was pretty crazy. We got our coffee, and right after we got it, there was a huge line, probably like 30 people. And right now, I'm wearing a jacket and a hat. On Saturday, it was t-shirt weather. Like, it was just beautiful, like just epically beautiful. I really have nothing to talk about today. I mean, I've always got something to talk about, but one of the things that was on my mind, and I'm going to talk about in this video, I'm kind of curious. I would love for the comments on this too, because I'm going to explain my situation, but I want to go over what was your homestead dream. Like everybody, a lot of you that are watching this are homesteaders, and a lot of you, I would say the majority, are not, and it is your dream to possibly one day, someday, hopefully, you know, that one day, day one, depending on how you look at it. How did you go from that dream state to reality? You know, I want to know the ones who did it and the ones that are still thinking of doing it. And what was the beginning of your dream? I know a lot of you might be from the show Yellowstone and things like that. That's what it seems to be like the thing now. But my wife and I were planning on moving much more rural well before COVID. We had gone to Montana a few times and prices were affordable, and then COVID hit. And I still remember my dream though. Every morning I would get to work before anybody else. I had a song that just, every time I heard it, it just made me think of the homestead dream. And it's kind of corny, but the song was Alabama, what is it, Dixieland Delight? I don't know why. Every time I heard that song, it just put the dreams in my head, made me just yearn for getting out of the city. And we really weren't in the city. We were in a very highly populated, used to be rural area. It really was becoming just the burbs of Milwaukee and Chicago, sadly. Because I mean, it was a nice rural place. I grew up there as a kid. It was beautiful. I remember riding my bike to my friends as a kid. I would ride about 5 miles, wouldn't see a car on a Saturday. You try that today, you'll probably get ran off the road, and there's probably hundreds of cars. It is just insane how busy it got. The problem though is infrastructure. Between Milwaukee and Chicago, you can build anywhere. There's really no infrastructure. There's no mountains, you have the Great Lakes, but that's really it. You have swamps, but they can make them into dry land. They just build a retaining pond, and then next thing you know, there's a distribution center there. That's all that area is becoming. There's just distribution center after distribution center after distribution center, manufacturing. It's crazy. We wanted an area that didn't have that, didn't have the possibility of that happening. And how do you do that? Generally, it's mountains and terrain and low population density, as stated in earlier videos. So, like I said, I would go to work, have my coffee. I used to get to work well before anybody else. And a lot of the places I worked, there was multiple shifts. But when I say before anybody else, I meant in the office. So I'd get to the office. First thing I would do, check emails, just to get rid of any fires that happened from the night before and all that. And then I would get my coffee, relax, take 5. Think of my Dixieland Delight song, and then, maybe check out Zillow for a little bit and just look at properties. I wouldn't spend a lot of time, But when you're at the office, 10 to 12 hours a day, you got to give yourself a little bit of time to dream a bit. Why else go to work and not have that dream? So, I'd look at Montana, Wyoming, all these places, and it's just funny because at that time, Arkansas wasn't even on the list. And we had kept looking, because I remember one time we looked at properties we could afford, but we really weren't ready. And then after COVID, my wife and I drove out to Montana again, and we could not afford anything. And it was just ridiculous. People were just buying properties sight unseen. And then we looked in the driftless area of Wisconsin. And if anybody's been to the driftless area, it's beautiful. I just talked to a young lady out here in Jasper who, her and her husband were over the road truckers. And she was telling me, she's like, oh, I've been to Wisconsin. And she was like, it looks just like Arkansas. And I'm like, oh, you were in the driftless. And she's like, yeah, I was right by Iowa. And I'm like, yeah, that is the one area of Wisconsin that's actually got some small little mountains, as you can call them. And it's a very beautiful area. And we looked there and we found properties we could afford. The taxes were pretty similar to Kenosha County where we're at, very high taxes. You had less restrictions on building. You could build like a mother-in-law suite with permits and you could do some things. But unfortunately, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump from Madison. And Madison's a pretty big city. A lot of people have money. In the Midwest, everybody makes money. So the properties were slow. I shouldn't even say slowly. They kind of slowly, but they were drying up and the prices were just shooting up. So that dream of going to the driftless just wasn't going to happen. We tried to do the move with some family and it just didn't work out. We found some properties that were a little over our budget, but they had multiple houses, 2 houses on the property, 40 plus acres, and if we would have just been selfish and just looking for ourselves, we probably would have found a place and we probably would have been in the driftless right now. But that's not the way it worked out. So we just kept pushing the dream out, and every time I'd hear that song, I just think, I just want a simple life, as self-sufficient as possible, no restrictions. Nothing worse than owning 40 acres and you can't do anything you want to do on your property because the county doesn't allow it. That's just one of the things that just irritated me about our last property. I had such a fiasco installing the solar system on there, and the politicians were just horrible to deal with. The one guy wanted to push our solar project out 6 months because he just didn't want to read it and deal with it at the moment. It was a new thing in the area. They weren't really used to it. They didn't have any ordinances made for it, so he just didn't want to deal with it. Luckily, we had friends in high places and they pushed him and made him do it, made him do his job. Imagine that, made him do his job, and we got it approved. But just having to deal with that, we didn't want to deal with, it just put a sour taste in our mouth. And so that was one of the things, the dream was not there. So I don't know how, but Jenny was like, hey, let's take a trip to Arkansas. And I was kind of like, what? Like, why? And, then she started showing me some properties and I was like, oh wow, there's actually some mountains there and things like that. And then I started looking at property prices and I was like, holy cow, your dollar goes a long way. And the terrain was really nice. The politics was good. Freedom was good. We were still reading that book, what was it called? Strategic Relocation in America. Joel Skolskin. I'll put the link in the thing. That was a big help of the dream, because I would read that all the time. I was in the prepping groups and all that. People are, going, Idaho, Montana, those are the big safe strongholds. And our problem though, we still like people and we like being social. And so we could find some properties in Montana. I found some in the Black Hills and just west of them into Wyoming that we could afford at the time too. But you're so far away from anything. And we still liked community. And So we ended up taking some vacation and looking at some properties in Arkansas. And when we did that, we met our realtor, who was just wonderful. She was the nicest lady, just above and beyond, you know, just a great person. And she kind of sold it to us, the whole area, the whole Arkansas is just, and then we looked at properties, and it was just, you've seen the earlier videos, it was just hard to find exactly what we're looking for. And I don't know if you've seen the earlier videos, the property we're at right now, I didn't like it. There was another property that I wanted to go see so much more than this property, and Jenny picked this property and wanted to see it. So she looked at everything, and I was just kind of like, I don't like, not being rude, but I was just kind of like, this really didn't do it for me. And I really wanted to go see these 2 other properties, believe it or not. But I like the area here. And then we looked, if you've seen the other videos, we looked at those 2 other properties, and they're just absolutely horrible. Like, just total bad vibe for us. They just didn't do anything. And we ended up looking at this property again, I think like 2 more times, and just really, but beyond looking at the property, we went to town, we went all around, you know, just met people, talked to people, you know, just kind of see, you know, see who our future neighbors would be, you know, not close neighbors, but still neighbors. And it was, we really liked it. Like, it was one of those, like, we couldn't wait to come back. And what's crazy is that other house, there was a 3rd house that we really wanted to see. And the people were having some problems, marital problems, so we could never look at the house. It went off the market, and then we were gonna just come back and go with, you know, this property we're at now, and then all of a sudden that property came back on the market. And, you know, our realtor, she went there and videoed it for us. And she did the best she could do, because it was really awkward. The family was still there. It was like the daughter, the mother-in-law, a bunch of kids, you know, so she was able to film as much as she could. And then we took vacation to go look at that house again. And I think before we made an offer contingent on us physically seeing it. So the offer was accepted. And we drove out here, I think like the next weekend or something like, I mean, we did like a weekend trip. We left on a Friday after work and then just came out here. You know, it's a 10-hour drive from Wisconsin, which isn't bad. I tell family all the time, like 10 hours is nothing. So we came out here and looked at it, and it was just, that one too just had a weird vibe. Like, it just, I don't want to say evil. It just had a weirdness to it, and we just couldn't get over that. And we were like, no. So then we asked the realtor, is there any way we can go look at that one property again, the one in Jasper? And then we did again. And we're, you know, then I looked at it finally with my eyes open, and I was like, wow, you know, this area is pretty awesome. Accessibility is awesome. You know, we're very high, we're on top of a mountain, but the road is great, because so many other properties, the roads were horrible. And then, you know, we just really looked at it again. And it was funny too, because I really wanted some cliffs. I really wanted a creek on the property. I really wanted like this stuff that was, I really wanted, but I considered it as a want, not a need. And we didn't even physically walk the property. We just looked at the house and the infrastructure and really didn't look at the property itself. It was there's still too many leaves, and we got ticks at one of the house, so I didn't want to go look in the woods or whatever so we never looked at the property. And then, you know, it's amazing what happened. When we finally explored the property, there's caves, cliffs, a creek, 2 creeks actually, and just our property is just phenomenal. I mean, I feel like I'm in a park every day. So it was just great. And then I had been working with our solar guy well before we even bought a property. So as soon as we got the property, I had him here like instantly, because we had it in our budget. We wanted the dream, you know, the Dixieland delight. You know, had a little jingle, you know, as they say, working all week and had a little jingle. We had in our budget, we planned well ahead to have the solar and some smaller, you know, things fixed. And we had him come out here, right? And he was phenomenal. He was just great to deal with. And it's so funny now too, because we used to feel, when we first moved here, it felt so isolated, and now it doesn't at all. I mean, we have friends, people are relatively close, you know, as the crow flies. You know, if you drive to their house, it'll take you 10 minutes, but if you hiked or took an ATV straight through the, you know, woods, it'd probably be, you know, 5 minutes. And it's just, I heard that song the other day, and that's what made me think of this. Like, I was just driving to go teach in the morning, and it came on the radio. And then also Devil Went Down to Georgia, which was another good jam. So it just made it a very pleasant drive. And I was just like, wow, the dream is there. You know, we're living it. You know, I joke all the time about my Bronco. I want a Bronco. That's not a dream. That's just wanting physical possessions that wouldn't change my life. Like, I joke with a lot of people. I could be driving a brand new Bronco or my Grenadier, whatever, if I would have kept my old job, and I would have been driving a big bro cruiser to work every day and not been in the mountains. We chose the dream over, you know, keeping my job and, you know, making good money, but paying a high cost of living that wasn't fulfilling. It really wasn't. We have just enjoyed it here. The other thing that's really weird, and this is really a hard one to explain, and it could just be the bucket in the sand, or is that the right term? The ostrich with the head in the sand. In our old area, we were surrounded by so many people, and I was on the prepper communities, like all the different prepper communities on the internet, Reddit, constantly worrying. I had friends in the police department in Kenosha County, Pleasant Prairie. You know, they would tell me what was really going on crime-wise, because it was much worse than what was reported. And it was just a constant worry. You know, like, what are we going to do if the crap hits the fan, and how are we going to, you know, because nobody in our family prepared at all, like nobody. And we knew our old 40-acre homestead, that's where everybody was going to go. And we were always constantly just worrying, like what's going to, since we've been here, I haven't worried at all. I mean, we have supplies and stuff that we moved here from the old place. I left a lot of stuff back there just in case something happens to family back there. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I told them what it is. You know, it's food and stuff for emergencies, but kind of like put me at ease. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to spend my money on that, but I did. But since we've been out here, it's just been, the stress level has just come down. I don't worry about, you know, like the Kenosha riots, that happening again. I don't worry about crime, like high crime. You know, there's crime everywhere, but we don't have as much violent crime in this area. I don't even know if there has been any, you know, but there's always some type of crime. But it's just, and then the prepping, like I prepared as best as I can be, you know. God willing, I'll live to an old age, or, you know, and hopefully the world will not end tomorrow. But if it does, we're prepared the best we can be. I mean, we're not going to live in fear and just, you know. So it's just interesting how that has just changed, because Jenny said the same thing. Like, she used to worry all the time too about things, and now she said, we really don't. You know, now we worry about, oh, am I going to get a flat tire, you know, driving down the dirt road here, or, you know, is whatever, I don't know. Like, since we've been here, we've had a major, you know, 100-year rain, floods, you know, we've had the big snowstorms since we've been here. I mean, it's a whole different kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. That's why I'm kind of curious what everybody else who has left the city too, if you kind of feel this way, or do you still worry? Because even on the forums now, like, people are like, oh, what are you going to do if some random people knock on your door in the middle of the, you know, and they're like, because they live in the city, and that's, your door is like 10 feet away from the sidewalk that random people walk on all the time. And I'm like, you know, if people come to my place in the middle of the night, my perimeter alarms are going to trip me off. They're going to be in the middle of nowhere, you know, like, it just does, and it hasn't happened since we've been here. You know, we have all the cameras, all the detection, and it finds animals. You know, every once in a while we'll get some random person at the gate because they're trying to find a different rental cabin, and they turn on the wrong turn on that road where it splits off. So, and that happens, but very rarely. So it's just, we don't worry about that. I mean, it's just a whole different level of, like I said, it's strange. I'm still a prepper. I still plan for things, but right now it's just living simple. You know, we're still gonna, I'm moving the freeze dryer because I'm gonna try to make a better area to process it, because we use what we put away too. So we don't just buy like 300 pounds of Mountain House freeze dried and put it in the bunker and that's it. We cycle through this stuff. So we have a combination of freeze dried stuff that we freeze dry ourselves. I have tons and tons and tons of eggs that I freeze dried, because when we had lots of chickens in Wisconsin, we would get so many eggs. Jenny would sell them and we would still have tons of eggs left. So I was freeze drying. I've got probably, and this is freeze dried weight, I probably got 100 pounds of freeze dried eggs, which is like, I don't know, thousands of eggs equivalent. Right now, our chickens, right now with the eggs, we have a lot of freeze dried eggs. So that's one thing I'm not too worried about. And the reason this video, I'm completely dressed completely different, I was filming that yesterday and the battery died in the microphone. So like 10 minutes of video is just, and I'm never gonna be able to replicate what I was talking about. But I know we're talking about, it's good to have a stockpile of stuff. We had the freeze dried eggs, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna, like I said, leave in the comments your homestead dream. Really want to know about it. What caused you to want to go homestead, or what is causing you to want to go homesteading? Remember the saying, one day or day one, depends on how you look at it. So hopefully your one day becomes day one and the rest of your life. So hopefully this was helpful. Until next time, thanks again, and get out there and homestead. It is cold today. Thanks again. Bye. Till next time. Bye. Big camera. I'm still waiting for the temperature in my water to be perfect. It's still warming up. I'm gonna end it there. Thanks. Like and subscribe. I gotta support this shirt. It was a gift. I love it. I do. So thanks again.